straight from the Mayor's mouth, with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Hello everyone and welcome to Straight from the Mayor's Mouth. Matt, it's been a while, but it's lovely to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you back, actually. I've had a few listeners missing you, telling me that they're a bit sick of just hearing me all by myself. So I think that's a positive comment for you, and I'm not sure what it says about me, but no, it's good to have you back here.
Well, thank you very much. Look, it's been a bit of a journey so far, but we're still in the midst of it. But it all seems sort of going okay right now. So
very good. Yes, well, I feel very selfish stealing you away for an hour on this week, but hopefully we'll have you back for future weeks as well.
Mate, look, I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that will be the case, certainly over the next few weeks. Looking forward to being back with you and doing our weekly podcast. Because it's been it's a big part, I think, of what I really enjoy in the week is the opportunity to catch up with you once a week to talk about these sort of things. So it's something I've definitely missed, and certainly from my own personal experience for the listeners out there, it's like so many people out there who are listening today, they've had their own cancer journeys, and right now I'm in the midst of mine, and so we're off in Sydney for most of the week and come back on the weekend. So it's been a bit difficult sort of to catch up with you, but really it's lovely to be sitting here again and sitting opposite you and having our banter and our weekly chat about what's happening in and around Dubbo from the regional council perspective.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've been listening to it each week, so you're staying up to date with what's been happening.
Absolutely.
That's one of the things you found is obviously staying up to date with it and keeping up to date. It's actually really easy for you to have these conversations because you're learning so much about council, and I know you become the local expert with your friends and colleagues around council activities.
Certainly it's pretty good when you're sitting around a pub on a Friday afternoon. You can actually give some real advice rather than just opinion for a change.
That's right.
But mate, look, it's so nice to be here, and again, thank you so much for inviting me back in to have our weekly chat.
Well, put it this way, you're so good that we didn't replace you, we just waited for you to come back, so you're irreplaceable.
I was going to say the chair feels quite cold. All right, buddy, well, let's get into it. So, look, first up this week, I'd like to talk about the new resident evening that was held last Wednesday night. So this has been something that has been going on now for a while. So how was last Wednesday night?
Yeah, really good. I do really enjoy these evenings, and I love to find out what brought people to Dubbo. I do tell them at the beginning, because I do warn them that I'm going to have a few of them in front of the microphone and ask them the question. And I say the correct answer, of course, is the wonderful council we've got in Dubbo is the main reason you came, but I want to hear the other reasons that you came
Absolutely.
as well. And so we play a few games with them, and this one we actually held at
Cluedo? Monopoly?
Well, not quite. We play some games that are very location specific.
Oh, okay.
But we held this one at Lions Park. This is next to the Visitors Information Centre. I don't remember holding one there before. We've held them at the Old Dubbo Jar, which is a great location, something a bit different. We've held them at the Western Plains Cultural Centre. So we've held them at different locations, and we try to vary it around. We generally say to people, if you've moved to Dubbo in the last 6 months or a year, if you haven't been to a new resident evening, then come along, basically. So we don't have any really tough, strict process as to whether or not you're allowed to come along. And if you couldn't make the last one and you can make the next one and you're still a new resident, sure, come on along. One of the things that I do like is that we have a whole range of different organisations, sporting groups, community organisations, that type of thing, that set up stands or stalls at these events, and they get to talk to these new residents about how they can get involved in the community. And that's a really important thing.
Absolutely.
If people get involved in the community, they're much more likely to stay here, they're much more likely to be part of it and contribute to the community. So that's great. But the games we play, I normally do a few different things. Sometimes I might do a poem about Dubbo, and then I might quiz them on that poem about Dubbo, and you'll do the standard thing where put your hand up A, B and C, and then if you've gotten that question right, you move on to the next round, that type of thing. So it's a way to teach them a little bit about Dubbo and also give a few prizes.
Yeah, a fun, interactive way of sort of getting engaged. I like it.
Yeah, that's right. This one I thought I'd try something different because one or other times I've done things where I want to find out who's moved from the furthest distance. And so who's moved more than 100 kilometres, and you get most of the people still there. Who's moved more than 500, and you keep going. And then typically you'll get people that have moved more than, say, 10,000 kilometres. And I think that's great and that's interesting, but I thought, well, it's a bit unfair on people that might have moved from a bit closer. You're always going to get international people then. So this time I came up with the idea, I was just going to name a letter of the alphabet, any letter of the alphabet, and I wanted someone to say, I've moved from, and I was happy to accept a country or a city or a town that started with that letter. I said I wouldn't accept a street name. I don't accept a city, town or country. And then put you come forward, whoever's first to come forward, starting from there, you won a little prize, but also then I got to quiz that person, what brought you here, what do you think so far? Just some of those sort of type of questions. So I think I started off with the letter P, and I had a few people put their hand up, but one was first up, and they came from the Philippines, so I was happy to accept that as an answer. And what brought you here? Oh, well, my husband's work brought me here, so I think her husband was too shy to put his hand up for the P, but the wife was happy to put that up. So anyway, that was one reason we see people come, is because obviously a partner moves here for some reason, and so it might be family related. The next one I went with, I think I went to the letter M, and so we had someone from Melbourne. And so again, Melbourne, it was a job opportunity. They worked, I think that particular person worked in the health department, and they saw a job opportunity and they wanted to get away from Melbourne, a bit too busy, a bit too congested. I think many people in Victoria got a bit frustrated during COVID, so that maybe led to a few people looking to move out of Melbourne. So maybe this person was that. I didn't get to that specific level of detail. But again, coming from Melbourne, fantastic. The next one was an interesting one. I went to the letter R.
Right.
And I had a bit of trouble. I was looking around, any R's, and no one was putting their hand up. And I hadn't researched where people would come from. I was just going to name random letters, hoping that would be okay. Anyway, finally someone put their hand up and they said, well, will you accept R for Republic of South Africa? It's close enough. That'll do me.
Absolutely.
So the crucial question I had for this particular person, so that was Wednesday night during the week. Thursday, of course, Australia played South Africa in the One-Day International World Cup semi-final.
Please to reminisce on that one. What a great result.
Exactly right. Yes. So this is the night before, and I said, so you've moved to Dubbo, fantastic. You've come from the Republic of South Africa. The crucial question, the next night, Australia playing South Africa, who are you going to be barracking for? And it was a pretty loaded question because you've got 100 people standing around from Australia. What are you going to say? And he said, I'm going for Australia. I hope he was telling the truth, but it was a pretty tough situation. So we did a few ones like that.
Lovely.
We had Dougal Saunders, our local member, who spoke to the audience as well. We had a local police inspector who came along and just spoke to them in general, just about sometimes when people come from overseas, they might not totally understand how the policing might work, and just to have a relationship with police. In some countries, the police are more threatening than they are in Australia. I think police in Australia are much more welcoming and friendly and happy to help, whereas in some countries maybe you've got a different relationship with the police. So I think it's important to have the police along there as well. And then we had 7 of our councillors along as well, so it's good for them to get around and talk to the various people. So a really good night. We did some lucky door prizes as well at the end of it all, but it's just a great way to welcome people. And I've actually had feedback from other councils where they've heard about this new resident evening we have, and I've had phone calls or sometimes just running into other mayors or councillors. Oh, now tell me about this new resident evening. How does that work? How do you invite people? How do you get people to come along to those events? Because it's just a nice way to say
So this is
welcome.
Not something, though, that is across the board in so many other councils. This is more Dubbo specific?
Very few councils do that. Certainly there's more now. When we first started this back maybe 10 years ago, there were probably very few councils that did something like this. But we're getting so many people moving here now that it is a great way to get people to connect, and even just people that might be talking to each other and, oh, you came from the Philippines. Oh, well, I'm from somewhere near there, or tell me your background. But it just generate some conversation. Sometimes we'll do some little games where we'll put the people in groups. Okay, everyone that's got a giraffe on their name badge that came in, you go and get in a group there together, and we want someone to talk about something from that group.
It sounds like it's incredibly well organised.
Our staff do a wonderful job. You're spot on there. I do very little. I turn up at the last minute, and sometimes I look at the program and go, oh, actually, we'll just change this game here. We'll do this a bit different, and I can see the staff rolling their eyes, or maybe mentally rolling their eyes.
Again. There he goes.
But they do a really good job, and just getting people along there, advertising it, letting people know about it. The different businesses, organisations, sporting groups, for example, that are around there, they're often ones that are involved in our Dubbo Visitor Guide. So there's 107 partners we have in that. So they're often ones that are involved in that as well. But it is a really good feeling.
It's a community-based thing, isn't it? Like
community-based. And you can imagine, for someone that's moved here and they get this as their first introduction, wow,
it's lovely.
This is a pretty nice community that I'm a part of. And we really stress that it's a community that you've just come to join. You haven't come to Dubbo, you haven't moved to a city, you've come to a community. And even for people from, say, Sydney or in this case Melbourne, when you talk to those sort of people, they go, wow, I've never met a councillor from where I came from. I didn't really associate with the local council. I've never met a mayor. I've never met the local member. So suddenly they're going, wow, this is really a community-based community-based city rather than just a place that I've moved to. This is going to be something I'm going to be part of. So, really good outcome. We'll do that again in 6 months' time and hopefully keep rolling that on every 6 months from there.
It sort of highlights again how wonderful Dubbo is, I think. Now I notice here, Council being added again in regards to what's coming up in the next Well, a little bit, isn't it? It's coming around very, very quickly, of course, is Christmas. Now, during the week, the council's organised a Christmas media launch. Now, I'm assuming there must be a few initiatives that are happening in regards to maybe shop local and those sort of things. So talk us through us, Matt. What's actually happening here?
It does seem too early, doesn't it? Middle of November.
I'll tell you what, it's come around very fast. We're only in November.
I had a meeting during the week and I said at the end of it, well, Merry Christmas. And I kind of felt like I said that too early. But then I thought about it and went, well, I'm probably not going to see this person again before Christmas. So I suppose it's okay. So yes, you're right though. Back to your question, we do have a shop local campaign and I know people talk about that a lot. In fact, I remember reading something about Mahatma Gandhi. One of the great things that he did lots of great things for India, but one of the great things that he did
he had a shop local campaign in Calcutta.
He had a shop local campaign in India. He said we should be doing more things with our local producers rather than getting things from overseas. So it's something that can be applied to...
Well, if it's good enough for Gandhi, it's good enough for us.
That's right. It was good enough for 1 billion people in India.
That's right,
it's
absolutely.
Good enough for 55,000 here. So it is something that we do often talk about, but it's sometimes rhetoric. Sometimes it's like, oh, shop local, you should do that. But then suddenly when someone sees a special online coming out of some multinational organisation, I'll go and grab that. But just try and get it locally. Try and see what you can do to get those local businesses. Make sure they're still there. We still want a strong CBD in both Dubbo and Wellington. We want that central business district to be central.
Yes.
We want it to be a business district. So it is important. So we've got a few initiatives in place. We've got a number of businesses, already 168 businesses have registered.
Oh, good.
Again, this is across Dubbo and Wellington, to be part of our Shop Local campaign. And that means you'll see a poster, probably an A3 size poster in their window. When you go in and shop there, spend more than $20, and then you go into the drawer, and we've got $5,000 of My Dubbo Region gift cards.
So is that from council supporting that?
That's council supporting that.
Fantastic.
That's exactly right. So you sign up, your businesses sign up to be part of this, and then essentially just by shopping there, you get a chance to win that. Now that $5,000 is not in one prize. That's in a range of gift cards that'll be given out. Now those My Dubbo Region gift cards can be used at those 168 businesses that are registered.
Great
so
idea.
from Dubbo perspective, we don't want to say, here's a prize, you could win a holiday to somewhere else. Well, that wouldn't make sense if we're promoting shop local. The idea of this is we want people to win prizes they're going to go and spend. So it's called Jingle Bucks.
Jingle Bucks, I like it.
And so basically it's essentially that way of getting people to spend locally. But we've also got a couple other parts there.
Right.
We've got a colouring in competition.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, but we've got...
Can you and I be in the colouring competition?
No, there's no open category. I did complain about that. I felt like it was a bit...
I've got a bit of time on my hands right now, so I could do a bit of colouring in.
Exactly right. So we've got a couple of different categories, but the maximum age category goes up to 12, I'm sorry.
Only 12?
Yeah, we don't quite qualify.
Right, yeah.
And we've got local artist Gillian Padrana, who's actually drawn the drawing.
Oh, she's
for
gorgeous,
that.
Jill. Yes,
she is, that's right.
yes.
And so that drawing will be the one that you colour in.
Excellent.
So that's colouring competition. But we've also got another one. When you go shopping with your kids, we thought we wanted to introduce something that gave them something to do, because sometimes kids can be a little bit distracted or maybe a little bit impatient when they're out shopping. So you can... It's actually been delivered to the schools, but you can get it online or you can go to the Visitor Information Centre.
Right.
And you've got a list of 10 elves on a sheet. And then a number of shops, not all 168, but about 50 shops have got a picture of a little elf and a name of that elf. And so with your little list of 10 different pictures of elves, you need to fill that in with the names of 10 of these elves.
Oh, okay.
There's 50 out there to choose from. You can just fill in any 10
So it's like a
of those.
Where's Wally, but it's like a Where's Elf.
Yeah, Where's Elfie?
Right, okay.
Yeah, I don't mind that. Where's Elfie? It's called an elf hunt, but Where's Elfie's not bad either as well.
Yep.
And so once you fill in those 10, you take your completed sheet into either the Wellington or the Dubbo Visitor Information Centre and you get a prize.
Oh,
so
nice.
Everyone's a winner. It's not a hugely
okay. So every
expensive
kid will
prize.
literally win a prize if
Every
you go
kid,
in and
that's
drop
right.
in your corrected sheet.
You don't go into the draw to maybe win something. Everyone wins something from that. So it's a good way of getting kids to participate because, again, it can be a bit of a tough time for kids while mum and dad are doing the Christmas shopping or whoever in your family is doing some Christmas shopping. Some of the stuff might be exciting because it's presents, but some of the stuff might be just boring old food and that type of thing. So a few different promotions there. Hopefully, in amongst all of that, there's something to get you interested and excited. But the main message from all of that is we're doing things to encourage people to shop locally. That's the critical thing. And even if you're not shopping at one of those 168, just try and spend your money locally. It keeps it in the local economy.
Absolutely.
Obviously longer.
And in the modern world today, with all the issues that we face, I think to get out there and to shop local and support our local people, we all benefit. Now, mate, speaking of media releases, this is an interesting one. Check what you flush. Boy, oh boy. So we're into the good stuff today, aren't we? So straight into it. Here we go. We're talking about what we put down our toilets in a nutshell.
We've hit the bottom, is that what you're saying?
What do they say, from the penthouse to the outhouse? Well, we're in the outhouse, folks.
Straight to it.
So what's happening here, Matt? We're not doing the right thing by our flushing?
Well, not everyone is doing the right thing. There's a lot of things like wet wipes, tissues, paper towels, napkins, cotton buds, sanitary products. They're being put down the toilet. Now,
yeah, right, okay.
Most people would vaguely understand how our sewage system works. When we put it down the toilet and we flush, it goes down to our sewage pipes on our property, which are typically gravity fed. So it's fed down the toilet, but then it's fed by gravity to various locations. You might have some pumping stations at different spots, but essentially most of the sewage treatment system, to get it to the sewage treatment plant, is fed by gravity. So if you put stuff down there that clogs up, expands, maybe can get a bit in the way of some of the other things that are being put down there, that can cause some problems. And obviously the last thing you want is some blockages somewhere in the system.
Absolutely. It's like the old line of trying to put a square peg into literally a round hole.
Yeah. So if you could just think about those things that you're flushing, those things that I mentioned, don't do those things. And so we've come up with a little thing to just say, flush only the 3 Ps.
The 3 Ps?
3 Ps.
All right. So what are the 3 Ps?
So if you flush toilet paper, so I've cheated a little bit there, toilet paper, pee and poo.
Oh, yes.
If they're the only 3 things you put down there.
Can we just refer to those as the most obvious things?
You are right. You are right. I did actually want them to be called the 3 Ts. So it was going to be toilet paper, so that seemed a bit more accurate. Toilet paper, twinkles, and then there's probably something else.
Starting with T, ends with erd. Let's call it turd.
Oh, no, you've said it. You've said it. But apparently that wasn't
politically
correct to go with the 3
poo,
Ts.
do they?
So you can use it out there if you want. If you want to go 3 Ts in your household, that's fine. I'm officially saying the 3 Ps. Paper, toilet paper, pee and poo. If you only put those down there, then the system's able to cope. Now, I have stood, a couple of times I've stood out at the sewage treatment plant and watched the raw sewage, huge pipes, the raw sewage being fed into that system.
What, you just stand around looking at those things?
Yeah, I just had nothing to do one day.
What an exciting day that must have been for you.
It doesn't look that exciting. It doesn't smell that exciting. But what I was fascinated by when I did that, in fact, the last time wasn't that long ago, I was standing there watching, and you could actually see other things. I saw a plastic bag come up through the system. So you see other things coming through, and you're thinking, surely we can just learn that just those 3 Ps go in there. So to call out to residents, please help us out here. We want to make sure that our sewage treatment plant works as efficiently as possible. We want to make sure you don't get blockages. Again, around Christmas, imagine saying, sorry, no one go to the toilet because it's got a blockage there, especially if it's the whole neighbourhood. You can't duck to the next door neighbour and go because they're blocked as well. So just see if you can do the right thing by those things.
Well, they say again, the 3 Ps, toilet paper, pee and poo. And Matt, last Friday, a very important day was set up with the White Ribbon Day. Now, for those people who don't know about White Ribbon Day, it's a day that's set up regularly once a year to remind people of what happens sadly in our society about the violence against women in particular, domestic violence. So it's a very serious day with a very serious subject matter. Talk us through this, Matt. So where was the day actually held this year?
So we had, well, I'm sure there were lots of things that occurred, but at the Rotunda, there were a number of the services that try and help with men's violence against women. And that's White Ribbon Day is specifically around domestic violence, focused on men's violence against women. And let's face it, let's call a spade a spade. Most domestic violence is with a male against a female. Unfortunately, that's what occurs.
It's exactly right. Like, there'll be some people out there now saying, well, what about women against men? And we're not saying it doesn't exist, and we're not saying here that that's not a problem. But statistically, the bigger problem is the men against women, isn't it?
Correct. Absolutely spot on. So there are a number of services that try and help females in that environment, and it would be a terrible scenario to be in. You've got a partner you hopefully trust, and hopefully you've got a relationship, and then it turns violent. But in talking to some of those service providers there, we think about violence. We think about that classic scenario that we might see in movies sometimes, where you'll get a male that gets angry or might be under the influence of alcohol or drugs, and then lashes out and hits his wife hits his partner, and then, of course, the next day, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Please forgive me, and I won't ever do it again. And that behaviour repeats over and over. But there are so many other aspects to it, and when you talk to some people, you do find out about some of these things. So a lot of it is control. So, for example, no control over a bank account, or the male might give the female partner a certain amount. Here's your $20 to spend for the week, and that's it. If you need more, you've got to come back to me. So control, which makes someone feel like they're not in control of their life. It can be tracking, and technology is to blame here for some of it. Some of the trackers that people use, I've got one in my luggage, so when I travel I have an idea whether it turns up at the airport with me, but people start putting those trackers in handbags or in cars, and so then I saw you were at a certain location today, what were you doing there? So all of these things here, so that mind control, that making you feel like you're being controlled by someone, all these things, it just sounds like a terrible environment to be in. So sometimes finally people get the chance and they get away, but you need some services to support that. So, for example, TAFE, there were some students that had helped put together some care packs there. So it's just some basic things. So some toothpaste, some soap, a toothbrush, just some basic things so that if you finally get a chance to get away, you might have to get away from the house without having any chance to pick up any of your belongings. And so then you're trying to stay somewhere. You don't have a toothbrush, and just some basics like that.
Those little things like that, like, just picking up on that. Here in Dubbo, Matt, there's a couple of little parts I'd like to ask you questions about. Statistically, are we sort of at state average in regards, I know it's a terrible thing to say, but are we above state average from the point of view of domestic violence? Are we below it, or are we around average? And second part of that is, if someone is suffering from domestic violence right now, what sort of setups do we have here in town to assist people?
So we've actually got a number of great organisations that do help. So if I go back to your first question, our statistics do show that domestic violence is higher in the Dubbo Regional Council, LGA, than the state average. So that's disappointing. And I remember speaking in one of my regular meetings with the police commander. There was a new police commander that came a year or so ago, and I remember talking to him, and he said the first thing that struck him when he was looking through our various stats was that DV was higher in his whole command, but also higher in Dubbo Regional Council, LGA, than it was for the rest of the state. And he wanted to understand why, and I can't explain why. I don't understand why myself. I don't understand the entire concept when you've got supposedly a loving partner that you want to then be in control of, or use violence or other tools to make sure that you're in control of that situation. So that's sad. On the plus side, there are some organisations that obviously help people get out of those situations, help people in those situations. But the other one that I actually liked was what I learned about on Friday when I was down at the display, or not display, the stallholders, the awareness, if you like, for those different stallholders there. One of the things I found out was there were a couple of those organisations that were focused on not the victims, but the perpetrators. Okay. And you might say, well, forget those perpetrators, they're obviously doing the wrong thing. Yeah. But the problem is, these perpetrators reoffend. So you're in a domestic violence situation, you finally get out of that. Well, that perpetrator, certainly he's failed in his relationship there, but he moves on to another relationship. And then without too much time going, suddenly the same scenario presents itself, and then that same perpetrator is doing the same thing. So a couple of those organisations focus on, you've done this is wrong. How can we change your behaviour so you don't keep doing it again to victim after victim after victim? So I thought that was actually quite sensible, because
absolutely
getting people out of that situation is important, but changing the behaviour of the perpetrator obviously is very important as well.
I think you're right, because I think it's one of those discussions too, and it's a hard discussion, because the focus is rightfully on the victim of this type of crime. But as you say, it's also important that if we're going to change the nature of this crime, then we have to change the nature of the perpetrator. Yeah,
that's exactly right. Now, one of the things that was quite confronting down at the Rotunda was that the TAFE students have been involved for some time now in cutting out various little stick figures. And they then took those stick figures and stuck them all up around the Rotunda, and they were all white paper to keep in line with White Ribbon Day. And so they were around the Rotunda, they were around the fence that we've got around the Christmas tree at the moment. And I spoke to one of the people there that were involved, and they said, do you know what all those stick figures are? I said, oh, no, I just assume it's there just to bring awareness. I said, no. We counted how many reported incidents of domestic violence we've had in the Dubbo Regional Council LGA, and we've got one of those stick figures for every reported incident. Wow. Now, I didn't count them all, but there were easily hundreds. There might have I don't know if there was 1,000, but there were easily hundreds there of these stick figures around there. So you look at
Visually, that would have been very challenging to have seen.
It was confronting, absolutely confronting.
Yeah.
So that was something that was like, wow, there are that many people reporting that. Now, obviously...
That's just the ones that are reported.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they said. I heard different numbers there on the day. I heard it could be 3 times to maybe 5 times as many unreported incidents as there are reported incidents. Of course, you don't know how many because they're not reported, so you've got no good solid data on that. But I would believe absolutely that it would be multiple times, because in some scenarios you're not going to report it. A, it might not be something that you think is bad enough. B, you might feel like it's your fault, because that's what sometimes the perpetrators make you feel like, that it's your fault. And C, it might not be something that you think you could actually report. So, for example, someone says, hey, I saw what you spent on shoes this week. You can't have access to the bank account. Stop spending so much money on shoes. And again, making you feel like you're worthless, making you feel like you shouldn't have control of that. How do you report that to the police? How do you go down to the police and say, my partner said this and I spent this on shoes? And it almost, I'm sure they would feel like, this isn't important enough to report. You've got other more serious crimes to go and report. Now, I'm not saying that it isn't worth reporting, but I think there are some people who would not report those sort of incidents.
Absolutely. And I think for a lot of people who are in that situation, that they may feel embarrassed, that they may feel sort of torn in regards to how they go about this. And look, just in regards to that, is there a role that Dubbo Regional Council can play in this to assist, to try to bring these numbers down and to maybe to educate people better in this space?
It's hard. It's one of those things that there are a number of organisations. Most of those ones that I saw were state-funded organisations. Many of them were not state-owned. They were separate private organisations, but they were getting their funding typically from state organisations, or private funding it might have been as well. So council obviously is there to support those organisations if we can. We don't have a direct responsibility to try and address that, but we have a community responsibility and to support those organisations where we can. So I think in general, no, not a direct outcome. There's nothing in the Local Government Act 1993 that says that domestic violence is something we should take on. It's probably more the state government that's focused on some of these outcomes. Again, it's a policing matter. So if someone's got something to report, what I've often said to people is make sure you use the police reporting number, so 131 444. If it's not an emergency, if you're in a situation where you need an emergency, 000 every single time. But when someone wants to report something, report a crime, report an incident, report a DV incident, for example, the idea of 131 444 is it's a way to get through to the police without it being an urgent emergency situation. And so, again, that's the primary reporting. And then obviously the court system, which is where some of these perpetrators might end up, some of these various agencies, most of those are state funded. So it's probably more the responsibility of state government than local government. Where we can see an opportunity to help, then obviously we will.
Now, Local Government New South Wales Conference. Now, that was something that, again, during the week that you went down and attended. It looks like maybe a few of the councillors went down there with you for this. This is a big event. This is the yearly conference where you all get together, isn't it, across the state, and you all get to meet and greet. And but also, I suggest try to put some motions forward to see if there can be some changes made across the board. So I'd suggest this is one of the big conferences of the year. So how did it all go?
It is the big conference of the year.
So it's the number one. It's the numero uno. It's the grand final of the conferences.
That's right. So this is the Local Government New South Wales organisation. All 128 councils are members of this organisation. So it is our peak body for councils across the state.
And they all attend?
I don't know. I assume pretty much.
Okay. The vast majority, I'd suggest, would attend.
That's right. There were... I'd say 1,000, but at least 800 in the room.
Wow, that's a lot of delegates, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. Now, from 128 councils, then you look at that, and mostly the CEO/GM will attend, mostly the mayor will attend, and sometimes you'll have multiple councillors. So I can't tell you anyone in particular, any council was missing from there. So I'm guessing they would know the exact results in terms of how many, but it would be unusual for not every council to be represented there. And you're right, we had good representation from council.
Yeah.
I would love, if work and time permitted for all the councillors, I would love all of our councillors to attend. But we had 8 of our 10 councillors attend. Brilliant. And it is a commitment. People think, it's another junket the councillors are on. But if this is a junket, then... Man, I need to get some better ways to get junkets going.
Having sort of spent over the last month or so quite a lot of time sitting in and out of airports and motel rooms and yeah, all that sort of stuff gets, the fun factor of that gets away pretty very quickly. So I can understand that this is no junket simply going down there and doing this. Is a very important matter.
Well, keep in mind that councillors have jobs in the main.
Yeah, absolutely.
So first of all, they went down on Sunday. So last Sunday, councillors went down to the conference. So they took one of their free days, if you like. So away from family, away from friends, whatever they had planned. Most of them flew down Sunday morning. There was an optional tour around lunchtime, and then there were some sessions on Sunday afternoon. Then Sunday night there was a dinner. We had a dinner with the Alliance of Western Councils. Then Monday and Tuesday we were there. So that's 2 days that they've got to get annual leave from work.
Yeah.
I remember back, the first one I went to was back in 2006.
Right.
And that was a 4-day conference. It had the Sunday and then 4 work days.
Yeah,
we
right.
didn't get back from that till Thursday night. LGNSW got feedback over the years from various councils saying it's too hard to get 4 days away from work. Most people get 4 weeks, so they get 20 days. There's 4 days just for one conference alone, and there's probably other days of annual leave they've got to take throughout the year to do your job as a councillor. So it's been reduced, and in that reduction, it's been compressed.
Yes,
so it's pretty full on. So normally Monday morning we'll start with a breakfast, or there'll be different breakfasts from different organisations held. Then you get into it. Usually about 8:30 it starts. Goes through till 5:30, sure, morning tea and lunch break, and then there'll be a dinner that night, so about 6:30 you'll start that. Next morning the same thing, there'll be another breakfast on, go through, and then it usually finishes.
They're big days, aren't they?
They are, yeah. The second day, probably about 4 o'clock to give people a chance to get home or get back to the flight. So we got home that night, whatever time the flights came in, probably 8 o'clock that night or whatever. So, yeah, it's a couple of big days. That's okay, but I suppose my point there is it's not a junket where we're sitting around and got our feet up and having spas and massages.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. And
now, that is a junket.
that is a junket, that's right. This one was held at Rose Hill Racecourse, and again, it's a challenge to find somewhere that can handle 1,000 people, because it's not everywhere, not every suburb in Sydney that's able to handle that number of people. But a few things happen at these conferences. There's one thing, many people that are listening will have been conferences, and at a conference you'll normally have expert speakers or panels where you'll have different information presented. You might have a few questions from the audience, and you're really trying to absorb information. That certainly happens at this conference, but 2 things that are different at this conference one thing that's different that I've never seen at any other conference, and one that's a little bit different. The first thing is you get lots of politicians turn up. You'll get ministers, you'll get opposition or shadows, and you'll get different members of parliament, both federal and state. So not many conferences have that number of people turn up that are in the political sphere, which that makes sense. It's a local government conference.
Absolutely.
But the second thing that happens is something that I just don't see at any other conference. Actually, no, that's wrong. There's the Australian Local Government Conference, which is the same concept, but for all Australian councils, which the same thing happens. And you have this concept where councils can put forward a motion.
Right.
So councils can say, I would like a policy change at the state or federal government level. So they put forward a motion, just like a council meeting, just like a council put forward a motion. So we put forward a motion through a council meeting, that gets debated at council. Then council has a position where they send off to local government New South Wales a motion they would like to have put on the agenda to be debated to try and change policy at the state or again at the federal government level.
Right.
That then goes to the conference and it's debated just like a council meeting.
So you've got 1,000 people in there now debating over motions.
And you can imagine, exactly as your tone suggests, the fun that you have with that. So you've got, and these are 1,000. There's probably 800 at the debate because you've got voting delegates, but say it's 800 people. Yep. All of these people are councillors on their local council that are used to getting up and debating things and putting their points forward and putting different views forward. So multiply that across 800 in the room. So you get some interesting points of view brought forward and an extremely diverse range of views from different councils across the state.
So you probably get some serious ones and some not so serious ones?
You get a variety of both. And there are some that it's a mix of frustration and entertainment because sometimes there's a bit of a divide there, I must admit. Some of the inner Sydney councils, so Sydney City Council, Northern Beaches Council, Randwick City Council, they have some different views on things, and even some of the other outer Western Sydney councils or regional councils. Yeah. And sometimes when I talk to other regional councils, they go, the last hour was a waste of time, wasn't it? Because we just talk about things that are important to Sydney-centric focal points, and there is a bit of that sometimes. But
the responsibility of these councils too are very different and very diverse too, aren't they? Like from the point of view of exactly what you're sort of saying is that. I know in previous discussion we've talked about how here at Dubbo Regional City Council we've got issues where in control of sewage, water, roads is a big part of our batch. Now I'd imagine some of these councils you've mentioned Pretty sure they're not in control of water. Pretty sure they're not having to worry about sewage. Pretty sure for most of them, roads is not a big issue. So I'd imagine some of their focus would be very, very different from the focus that we would present.
Yeah, you are absolutely spot on. And there is a bit of discrepancy. So take Sydney City Council. I'm not trying to pick on any council.
No, please, Phil, do.
But
that's fine.
Sydney City Council, exactly as you said.
Yes.
Sydney Water takes care of water. They've got their sewage taken care of. They don't have a lot of roads. Some of the roads they do have are paid for by the state government. Some of their transport issues, trams, that sort of thing that go through Sydney City Council.
Yeah.
State government's paying for those, paying billions of dollars for those.
Yes.
So you've got a whole range of different things. They don't control an airport. They don't control childcare centre.
No.
They don't control things like, as you said, sewage and water. They don't have livestock markets for some reason. I can't see people taking their cattle and their sheep into the centre of
I'll tell
Sydney.
you one thing they do control pretty well are those parking. The
parking
part of
meters.
that's woof.
Parking meters and parking station. Sydney City Council generates more than $50 million of revenue each year.
Are you serious?
Our income for a year is less than $250 million. So round numbers, call it $250 million.
Yep.
So we don't collect $50 million. So that would be a fifth of our income just from parking meters.
Jeez.
I have heard some regional councils say that some of these left field ideas that are brought forward to a conference for debate are brought forward by some councils that have got nothing better to do than count their money and they don't know what else to do, so they've got to dream up things. The other thing that's probably frustrating is that a councillor on Sydney City Council gets paid more than a mayor of a Burke or the mayor of Walgett.
Is that right?
And so the mayors of some of those regional communities have greater responsibilities, in my opinion, than the councillors. It just seems to be that the budget's a bigger number, therefore they get paid more. So I don't always agree with some of those things. So there is a bit of divide there, and that is never more obvious than when you hear the debate and you hear the different angles that are coming from the debate.
Please talk me through some of them, please. Come on.
Well, look, there is one that I want to mention. It was the highlight in terms of that change there. There was a bit of a discussion. I won't go into great detail about it, but there was a bit of a discussion put forward about regions and climate change and the different ways that you can generate income for different regional areas. And again, with this whole big picture of climate change sitting over the top of all of it. And there was a mayor of a regional council who stood up to move an amendment because just like a council meeting, you have amendments. And the amendment was that, yes, this all makes sense what they're talking about in cutting back some of the income streams from regional areas in relation to climate change.
So this is coming from let's just say a city council.
That first part was, and then the second part for the amendment was coming from a regional area that said, it's okay, but there seems to be a lot of income generated from parking meters where internal combustion engine vehicles are using those parking meters. So all income from those parking meters, if they're an internal combustion engine vehicle that's parking there because of the impact on climate change, all that income should be given up as well by those councils that are generating that.
I could imagine the squealing that would have suddenly have started erupted from that one.
The fishing line was thrown out there and the bait was well and truly taken. And so you can imagine some of those councils jumped to their feet very quickly because
no.
They've got $50 million to protect. So I must admit, I sat back there and had a good chuckle. And I talked to that mayor afterwards. And I said, well done. I was very amused by that.
Touché.
Again, it is serious debate. And even something like that was put forward to demonstrate that you might be sitting there on your high horse saying we've got to do something about climate change. Regional areas are doing things about climate change, and I would argue much more so than Sydney City Council and also the city councillors individually driving their SUVs and not ticking their boxes for green electricity or not having solar panels on the roof of their house and all sorts of things. So, again, I think we are taking some pretty positive action out here. My favourite one from last year was a similar concept where they were talking about where you're generating renewable energy and the contribution that regional areas were making, and there was a regional mayor that jumped up and said, right, well, I'd like to add a bit to that. We're not going far enough. We need to have more wind turbines, so we need to reserve a spot on Manly Beach for some wind turbines. And again, you can imagine some of the people from the Northern Beaches Council.
Oh, that's so funny. That's brilliant.
So on a serious note, though, apart from the debate there, and there were good things. Dubbo Regional Council had a resolution that we put forward, a motion we put forward that was debated there, and we
did it get through?
2/3 we got through.
2/3, okay.
So we had 3 points in our motion. It was about the code of conduct. One of the issues about code of conduct now is that someone lodges a code of conduct and it goes through to our CEO. The CEO then has to make a decision whether to say it's not going any further, there's not enough merit in that, or yes, we're going to go further with that. And it puts the CEO in a tough position. And they can easily accuse a CEO of being biased to protect the councillors that the CEO's got on council, or targeting a council if someone gets sent up the chain. But if it gets sent up the chain, there's an immediate cost to council for everyone that's sent up the chain. So, if I don't want to be accused of being biased, I'll put them all straight through. But then some of them are frivolous and we're spending these through. That just seems crazy. So we had 3 points to our resolution from council.
Right.
The first one was that all the code of conducts go straight through to Office of Local Government or an independent body. We don't really mind, just not to council. Secondly, that body, the state government effectively, wears the cost of that, so it's not putting the cost onto council each time. And the third thing was that if you as an individual lodge 3 unsuccessful claims in one term of council on the one council, then you're labelled a vexatious complainer and can't lodge any more complaints. So a bit like DRS in cricket, where you get a couple of goes and if they're unsuccessful, that's it, bad luck.
You've used and exhausted them.
And it was interesting because the local government minister, Ron Honig, had already spoken at the conference before this one came up for debate. And he actually made mention of a number of things, but one of the things he said was that the code of conduct is being used in some examples as a weapon. So if I want to make your council look bad, if I want to make you look bad, I lodge a bunch of code of conducts on you. It doesn't matter if there's any merit about those or not. I can just keep saying, I don't like the way Mark combs his hair. I don't like the way that Mark referred to someone in a debate at council last week. I saw Mark down the street and he seemed like he brushed someone off. He was a bit rude. So bringing council into disrepute. You can keep lodging those complaints.
And you see how the media picks up on it when they turn around and they say there's been 40 vexatious claims. Well, there's been 40 claims lodged against council in regards to issues that they feel as though the community needs addressing.
And we have to report how many code of conducts are lodged to council. We don't have to report what they're about. We don't have to report who they're about. Just the number. We don't have to say, well, in fact, we can't say all of those were thrown out or only one needed to go to a reviewer. So you can make a council or an individual councillor look bad. And, of course, it wastes time of council staff, wastes time of the councillor involved. So bottom line from all that, they were the 3 points we put forward. It was debated there at the conference. And number 1 and number 2, in terms of review, got up. But number 3, vexatious complainers, and maybe because many of the councillors in the room are those vexatious complainers, that one didn't get up.
Yes, absolutely.
Some people argue they didn't like the idea that you were basically put in the naughty corner. But again, if you're going to keep lodging unsuccessful ones, then you should be put in the naughty corner. But anyway, that one didn't get up. But there were some serious things debated there.
Well, I think there was a song about 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
That's right. But we also had Mark McCrindle talk there. Now, I do like Mark. He's a demographer, talks about a range of things. And it's important for councillors to be up to date with where the community overall is headed. What are our demographics doing? How are they changing? How can we accommodate that in our council and what we're doing? One term that he used, which I thought was quite good in terms of a change in demographic, is there are more kippers now.
What, fish?
Well, I thought of that, but
like
kippers spelled...
English fish, you have kippers and chips or something, don't you?
That's right. KIPPERS he referred to, and it's an acronym that refers to Kids in Parents' Pockets Eroding Retirement Savings.
Oh, I like that. I like that. I'm big on acronyms, as you know, and I like that one. That's a good one. A kipper.
So he did talk about the fact that you do get people aged 25, 30, maybe even 35, moving to their parents' homes or helping mum and dad spend their money, their retirement money, because it's so hard to get ahead now.
Nicely stated, helping them, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, that's right. Now, can we take advantage of that? A lot of those kippers are in Sydney. Maybe some of those parents should suggest that those kids move out of Sydney where it's too expensive to buy a home and living in a spare bedroom in mum and dad's home.
A little Dubbo prospectus in front of the kids sort of thing. I've got an idea for you.
Yeah, so I think that was important. Having ministers there, having members of parliament there, both federal and state, that's important. But, of course, sharing information with colleagues. And I did have a few questions from different colleagues there. New Residents Night was one thing that actually I had a couple of questions about. I had some questions just about simple things. What time do you have your meetings? How do you work with your committee structure? Because there was one councillor that talked to me that has no committee, no standing committees, but 2 council meetings each month. And so how does that work compared to how ours works with standing committees? So just those sort of things. And there's no doubt about it. The most discussed toilet in this nation was talked about, and that, of course, was our 3D printed toilet.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There were people that heard about it, they want to know about it. How did the construction go? How much did it cost? How quick was it? All sorts of things. So it's not just architects, it's not just developers, it's not just planners, not just builders around this nation that are talking about that.
The councils are talking.
Absolutely right. There's no doubt about it that other councils are talking. So I think overall, an interesting process, interesting concept, and again, very important for our council to be involved with it.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know, one of the things that you like to do is to have a regular catch-up with the police, have a bit of a chat about how things are going and, one of those sort of opportunities to, I suggest, for both parties to talk about, where we're at statistically and what's happening in our community and how we're going to move forward in a more positive way. So how's the chat this week?
It's always interesting. It's also a bit frustrating. Obviously, council can't do anything. We can't direct the police. We can't even demand that we have a meeting with the police, but the police have always been very open to discussions with council. So we do meet on a regular basis, and this week we had another one of those meetings with the commander there of police. So that's the whole region. It's not just the Dubbo area, it's the whole region, the commander for that area there. And so we do have a good discussion. So the CEO and myself go along and we talk about what's happening and just to get a bit of a handle on things. And probably the most frustrating part, and they can't talk about this publicly because they've got their job as police to do. And I suppose I'm picking up on just some of the discussions I have with various police. But one of the things that seems very frustrating is that the sentencing regime in this state seems to be focused on making sure that they keep giving people a second chance.
Yeah, right.
But a second chance sometimes grows into a fifth chance, a 10th chance, a 20th chance, multiple chances. And I think one of the frustrations to the police is that they do an exceptional job.
Yeah.
They find the perpetrators of crime, they find the evidence that's needed, and they get to the stage where the police prosecutor can take that into a courtroom. Unfortunately, our sentencing laws, I just don't think are strong enough, whereby those people that appear before a court end up walking out the door.
Well, it's a fair call because I remember you talking about before, going back a while ago when you went out to the Wellington jail, the correctional centre out there, and you made mention at the time of the fact that, crime rates are up, but the prison numbers are down in the sense that they still had space out there.
Yeah.
Now,
it was about half full, I think, from memory there.
That's incredible, isn't it? Let's get straight back to your point, is that obviously it sounds like the police are doing the job. They're out there doing their level best to get the criminals off the streets. Well, it's up to the judges then to put them away. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I can say it because I'm a citizen and I have my opinion on this. And if how many second chances do you give to a person before you turn around and say enough's enough? You need to be put away for a period of time. And look, I understand the fact that they especially with kids and things like that, they say they try to avoid putting them into the prisons because that's where they learn a lot of their skill set. They then go back out there and commit their areas of crime. And I know there's a lot of complicating factors, but at the end of the day, they live in a community. And as a community, you've got to protect the community. That's a priority number one. So, yeah, I'm with you. If these people aren't getting put away like they should be being put away, well, that's not on the police. That's on our judicial system.
And I think the police do an excellent job. And even talking to the commander, sure, he would say, I'll take more police numbers, no doubt about it. If someone said you can have another 10 police, then he would say absolutely. But they're not in the stage where they're desperate for police. They've got pretty good numbers across the board.
Yep.
And so in general, when people say, what are we doing about crime? And they point to police, I think that's probably a bit unfair on the police.
Yeah.
I think the police are doing their job.
Yep.
And it probably is frustrating for police to do their job, to find perpetrators, and then see them go through a revolving door
must be enormously frustrating
in the
for
sentencing
them.
system. So I think the state government could do something definitely about this in terms of minimum sentencing. Now, I know it's been tried up in the Northern Territory and some people have said it's not a great success there. There's been some isolated incidents that maybe aren't fantastic. I don't have enough data to talk about that with any authority.
Yeah.
But in general, the magistrate, for most crimes, there's some serious crimes they don't, but in most crimes, they have full flexibility to go to nothing up to whatever the maximum penalty might be.
Yep.
And so it puts the magistrate in a bit of a tough spot that you're hearing the story, and some of these people have terrible stories that has led them to this position of committing a crime.
Yep.
And so you hear that and you think, gee, that's unfair, that person ends up in prison. And so I think the magistrates are trying to rehabilitate people, and to try to do that, prison doesn't seem like a great environment to rehabilitate. But the flip side of that, and this is the challenge, is the protection of the rest of the community.
Absolutely.
So while you're trying to rehabilitate that one person and that one person goes and commits another 10 crimes during that rehabilitation process, you've just got 10 more victims of crime.
Yep.
So where do you draw the line there? And I think at the moment the community in general is saying the line is being drawn too far on the side of rehabilitation and not enough on the side of protection of the community.
And as you sort of say, it's not just Dubbo. It's just across the board. You watch most the news items at night. Look in Queensland right now and see the debate and the discussions happening up there at a state government level in regards to youth crime. This is across the board, and this is a real issue that has to be addressed again. I know it's a constant level of debate, but we constantly need to be discussing it because it's constantly happening.
You're spot on, and in particular, it's not a Dubbo problem, it's not a Wellington problem, it's not a Dubbo Regional Council problem. It's across vast areas of regional and metro areas. It's across the state, it's across the nation.
Yep.
What do you do about it? Well, in our scenario, Dubbo Regional Council has got very little power to do anything about it.
Yep.
Sure, I can sit down with the police and have a great chat, but again, because we don't control the police, even if I said to the commander, well, I think what you need to do is go and put some more people there and do that, and he'd say, thanks very much for your comments, Matthew. That's it. He doesn't have to take any notes. He's polite enough that he does have a good conversation and certainly will listen to me. But the bottom line is I don't direct the police.
No.
Council has very little it can do to control crime in this city, in this Dubbo Regional Council LGA.
Yeah.
We'll keep having conversations, and if there's an opportunity for us to do something and work with the police, absolutely we'll do it. If there's an opportunity for us to lobby state government and say you need to look at some minimum sentencing, you need to look at the sentencing regime, you need to look at what's happening there, then absolutely that should happen. Now, I have heard the argument before that the sentencing must be okay because the police prosecutors aren't appealing many of the decisions of the magistrates. But when you talk to some of that group of people, they have two problems. One, they're pretty busy going through and putting these cases forward for these people that keep coming back through the program.
Absolutely.
But the second thing is I think they throw their hands up in the air a little bit and say, well, we presented the case, we went through and had a good case, and this should have had a custodial sentence, and it ended up not having that. What hope have we got? What's the point of appealing? And by the way, I've got another 10 cases to go.
Yeah, that's right,
over
exactly.
There. So I don't know that that's the best metric as to whether or not someone should be increasing those sentencing regimes based on the appeal process alone. So we'll keep meeting with the police. We'll keep working with them whenever we can. I'll keep talking to other levels of government, including state government, including Attorney General, just to see if there's any movement there. But something has to be done. And again, this isn't just our problem. And so when people say crime in Dubbo is terrible, well, crime across the state, crime across the nation, it's increasing across all of those. You know, we get to look at those stats and we see there's an increase in crime across all of those areas. So it's not just a Dubbo problem. And I'd hate to see Dubbo labelled as having a crime issue that's any different to going to any other of those regional locations, regional cities, etc.
Yeah. The CEO 12-month performance review. Now, good old Murray Wood down there, the CEO of Dubbo Regional Council. It sounds like he's been up for a review, and there's a bit of a panel of councillors setting up some targets there for Murray for next year. So how'd it all go? Yeah,
two parts to this particular process. The first one is that there's a very formal process that should be in place across every council. It's optional, but every council should be doing this, where you do a formal process. And on our review committee, we have had traditionally the mayor and the deputy mayor and then the heads of the committee. So at the moment, that consists of myself and Richard Ivey as the mayor and the deputy mayor, and then the three heads of our committees are Matt Wright, Shibli Chowdhury and Jess Goff. And again, that formal review process with an external consultant, we sit down and we go through all the performance targets that were set for Murray 12 months ago.
Right.
And then we go through and look at those and how he's performed. So it's the opinion of the five of us. And also Murray will put forward his position now. He would review how those things have progressed. Again, it's very formal, and it should be very formal because you don't want to just have you're going okay, Murray, everything's okay, have a nice day. You really want to do that formal process. And ultimately, that will then go back to council in a confidential meeting to say, here's what the panel determined, and now councillors can have their input as well. And councillors talk to the review panel individually. I had a couple of calls from different councillors just talking about that review process. But that's an important part of the process. I also do, in between those 12-month reviews, I also do a 6-month less formal process with Murray, where Murray and I sit down and just look at the performance targets. And again, it's a bit of a halfway through that project review, how are things going? Because again, sometimes people have a different angle or a different view on how they're going compared to someone else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's a good part of that discussion overall. And then in conjunction with that evening, after we did the performance review, so that was looking back at the last 12 months, we then look forward. And the critical part here is that all councillors are involved in this to say, what do you want Murray to focus on for the next 12 months? There's no good in 12 months' time saying, oh, Murray, you didn't achieve A, B and C. Well, 12 months ago, you told me what you want me to focus on. I focused on that. So there was no way I was going to focus on those things because you didn't ask me to do that.
Yep.
So getting that right, and again, this is all councils involved, getting that right is really important. So what we want to see from our CEO, what we want to see from council, well, this is the opportunity to do it. And remember, council only employs one person. So when someone says, oh, I talked to someone the other day and they didn't do this right, or they didn't grade my road, or whatever happened there, can you go and fix them up? I say, sure. I'll go and have a talk to the CEO who will go through the right processes and the right channel to review that bit of work. But I am not authorised to go and talk to an individual staff member and tell them what to do. And that changed in the Local Government Act 1993. The previous Local Government Act 1919 had the mayor and councillors with much more power, individual power to go and direct people. And the old joke that you talk about when you drive on country dirt roads, when you see a short strip of bitumen there, you go, right, that looks like where the mayor or a councillor used to live in that particular community, because they would have literally gone and said, it's a bit dusty at my house. Can I get you, Jimmy, to take the grader out and then take the the equipment to grade it, put a bit of bitumen down there, just so it's not dusty in front of my house. Well, the Local Government Act 1993, which Jerry Peacock was the minister at the time that brought that through to the government, then that was one of the things that was changed, that the councillors as a collective employ one person, that's the general manager or CEO, and that person then employs the 500 people in our case of council.
So how prescriptive is council in regards to directing the CEO in regards to his role? Like there'd obviously be some, as a CEO of any company and organisation, there would be certain expectations that I suppose that would be part of the role. So from the council's perspective, does the expectation change from year to year, like the points of focus? Because there are general focuses that obviously CEO has to do, but does council put forward a list of specific areas of focus they want our CEO to focus on above and beyond the normal role?
There's two parts to the document that we create. One part is, as you say, the general areas, the general things you want to focus on, make sure things are being taken care of, make sure work health and safety is an area that we're not going to have issues with, make sure you've got some general things in place. Then you've also got some specific areas. So it might be, for example, we want some focus over the next year on housing. How can we bring more housing to the market? The Northwest Precinct that we've talked about a lot, that was one of the targets from the last year, for example, in terms of developing more housing availability. And we believe by having more housing availability on the market, that will help address the affordable housing issue that we've got, again, across the nation, across so many different areas. So you do get some areas where you're focusing on some projects. You don't want to get down as specific as, I want to make sure we get new lines painted on the car park in the council car park.
That's right.
It's not going to get
so
that
you avoid
specific.
getting into the nitty-gritty of some of those sort of things, I'd imagine, but some general sort of broad visionary type goals?
Correct. And it might be about sustainability. We want to make sure we get our budget down to a $0 budget. We don't want to have a negative in our budget. And in terms of that type of thing, we're not saying we want you to go and save $5 off this particular area of council to get down that zero budget. It might be as general as we need to get down to a $0 budget, and so you need to put some steps in place to address that. So then Murray's got the flexibility, and he might talk to councils about different things, and there might be different decisions throughout the year, but he's got that general focus. And so $0 budget, that's the focus for council. I need to work out how I can deliver that. So it's that type of thing and going through. And again, some things you might be able to deliver on, some things you may not be able to. So, for example, it might be community safety is important. How can we improve community safety? Well, that might be a bit of a tough ask because you might have some ability, but you don't have total ability to deliver on that. Housing is one as well, where you can develop housing options there, but you can't. We're not going to go and build the housing. We're not going to go and build cheap housing for people to be able to move into. We just A, don't have the budget, B, it's not our responsibility to do that. So it is a pretty comprehensive document in terms of being able to refer back to that to say this is what I need to focus on. And sometimes those priorities might change throughout the year, things might pop up, but in general that gives you an idea.
Okay. Now changing things up completely differently. An area that I know you love enormously, and I always enjoy listening to your recitals, poetry at Bracken House.
That's one of the regular aged care facilities that I do. And the community there absolutely loves it. And I do some of the same poetry. I normally know about an hour's worth of poetry off the top of my head, so I do cross over and do some of the same, but they still seem to love it, especially some of the old banjo classics. Clancy the Overflow, for example, they love because they used to learn that at school. I did always try and introduce new ones. I like to try and learn a new poem maybe once a month, once every couple of months. And so I did a new one actually by Roald Dahl this week.
Oh, did you?
Which is one, Little Red Riding Hood. It's called Little Red Riding Hood and the Wolf, but it's Roald Dahl, who used to have an interesting twist on different things.
Yes.
And certainly
it was a little bit black, the old. There was a darkness to old Roald Dahl.
It does, and that's exactly what he has in this poem. So I've actually posted a video of that particular one on my YouTube channel and my Facebook page. So if someone wants to go and look at that little 3-minute poem by Roald Dahl. But Roald Dahl I used to love for some of his interesting short stories. The Great Switcheroo was one of my favourites from Roald Dahl. But when you read this poem, you think, I don't really know Roald for his poetry, but a bit of a dark twist, a bit of a different angle on things.
I'll give you a trivia question for you. So there you go. See how much you know Roald Dahl. Which country was Roald Dahl born in?
Can I say England?
You're very close. Very close.
You give me a second option now.
Oh, yeah. Well, we talk about second chances.
Okay, good. Chances. So somewhere in the UK.
Somewhere in the UK.
Right. So Wales.
Wales. Well done.
Well
done.
Phew.
There you go. So you've narrowed down to two. So you've got it into. He's from a little place called Llandaff.
Yeah, right.
Llandaff, which is sort of part of Cardiff there in Wales.
So is there a reason you have that little bit of information to pull
Well, it is quite obscure, isn't it, sort of thing? But my sister-in-law lives there in Llandaff. Really? And that's their big claim to fame is the fact that Roald Dahl just lived up the street and was born up the street. There he was.
That's right. It's amazing the claim to fame different organisations and cities have. So
how
big would that place be?
Llandaff? I'd suggest probably think South Dubbo.
Right, okay, so pretty small.
That's a pretty small little area. It's a lovely cathedral there. There you go.
Right.
There you go. So sorry, back to your story.
No, that's fine. Look, it's a good opportunity to get out amongst the community. They do really enjoy that. And I do ask for suggestions from the group to say any other poems that they might like to see me do. And sometimes they'll bring me forward some different ones that I'll go and learn for them. But it's nice to get out there in the community. Absolutely. And a bit of a different pace than the rest of things that are happening. It's you take an hour out of your. I probably do one of these once every 3 or 4 weeks at different places. Yep. Then you take an hour out of your day if you like, and you just perform poetry for no other reason than you know that people in their audience are going to sit back and enjoy someone coming along and entertaining them a little bit. And they don't ask any council questions, actually. Normally, every now and again someone asks something about council, but normally they just see me as a poet rather than as a...
Can you do Man from Snowy River for me again?
Well, I don't. Sometimes I get asked that and I don't do it because it's too long. And I find people... it's 10 minutes. Yeah. And I reckon 3 to 4 minutes is a sweet spot. Yeah. People start to lose concentration and I must admit that as good as I am at my poetry, there are some times that some of the people do fall asleep in my audience. So a 10-minute poem, then I reckon I'd lose too many of the audience.
Man from Ironbark, that's probably a right smack bang sweet spot. 5.
That's right. I love that one. And one of the things about that one is there's a couple of parts where there's a bit of high volume.
Yeah. So wakes him up again for them.
When he screams murder, bloody murder, it's a good chance for me to say that very loud. And anyone that has had a little bit of a snooze during that, then they wake back up. You get some funny incidents. I had one time. Actually, I had a couple of my kids who were home and they were doing some poetry with me. I dragged them along. Now, they're quite happy to go along normally and help entertain, but we had a 3-person poem, so we're all out there doing our best performance and putting everything into it. And then one of the gentlemen at the front just stood up and had his cup of, he didn't have his cup of tea. He was going to get his cup of tea, had his saucer and his cup, and he was a bit unsteady, so they were clanking around, and he just said, milk. I need to make sure I get milk in my cup of tea. I want milk. And so he just walks across in front of us, dangling his cup and saucer, yelling out milk as he went, and my kids are looking at me, and I'm just kind of nodding, keep going, just keep going. So it was pretty distracting.
Tough crowd.
That's right, as you walked across there. But anyway, thank you to those different organisations that let me come on and do a bit of poetry there, and hopefully their residents enjoy it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, I know we talked about this a couple of months back now, was the Meet Your Community Leaders. And again, this is something that is something that's Dubbo Regional Council only does. And this is where yourself and State Minister and Federal Minister all sort of get together, or member, all get together and meet and greet. Now, last time we were down at the, the little markets down there, our little fortnightly markets. Now, it looks like another one's coming up, but this time, I remember last time you promised it's going to be in Wellington, and it looks like it's going to be. So is this next weekend in Wellington?
Correct, yep. So Saturday, the 25th of November from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m.
Calendar?
Yep, so put it in there for residents of Wellington, or Dubbo residents can go
Yeah.
as well. And you are right, it is unique for Dubbo Regional Council. Nowhere else in this nation has all three levels of government sitting there or standing there side by side in an open forum on a regular basis.
Wow.
So it is a
good, isn't
fantastic thing to take advantage of. We normally call them community leaders breakfast because in the past we often put them on and put breakfast on. But the Rotary markets, for example, there are different parts of the Rotary markets there that sell breakfast. So we don't want to take away that income from those.
Yeah.
So we're just calling this one a community leaders meeting.
So
Meet
is Mark
your
Colton and Dougal himself all going to be there?
Well, Mark's not the member for Wellington. There's a boundary there. So the electorate of Parks, this is a crazy thing about the amalgamation that occurred.
Yeah.
The amalgamation occurred at the state level, but the federal seat has part of it in Clare and part of it in Parks.
Is that right?
Yeah, so Mark Colton won't be there. We'll have Dougal Saunders there because Wellington is still in Dougal's area.
Right.
And then we've got Andrew G, and I'm not 100% sure that Andrew G is coming.
Right.
But he's not convinced of the concept of these meetings. He's done one before, and he said, I don't know if that was the greatest thing I've ever done, Matt. And I said, look, I think it's good for the community. So not sure if Andrew G will be there. He knows about it, so hopefully he'll be there. But certainly in Dubbo, we have Mark Colton, we have Dougal Saunders, and then myself and councillors go along. Yeah. This one, definitely myself, definitely Dougal, definitely we'll have some councillors there, and hopefully we'll have Andrew G there as well. I'll tell you in a week's time whether he turned up or not.
Turns up or not.
He knows about it. I've talked to him about it,
and
wonderful. He's a definite maybe to come along there. So it is good. So we're calling it now the Meet Your Community Leaders, MYCL.
Oh, so you're picking up these acronyms as well, aren't
I know,
you? Now? You're all over them.
Yep, so that's right. So the Rotary Markets, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. this Saturday, depending when you listen to this podcast, but 25th of November is when that'll be on. So I encourage people to come along.
Absolutely.
Whatever ideas, whatever issues, you've got hopefully three of us there, at least two of us there. Take advantage of it. That's the big thing there. I really encourage people to take advantage of it.
Yeah, indeed. Now, speaking of upcoming events, the Dubbo Day Awards fall on the 23rd of November, I think, which is Dubbo Day.
Correct. So the 23rd of November 1849 was when Dubbo was officially gazetted as a village.
There you go.
We had a police lockup 2 years earlier than that.
Oh.
So I'm not sure if that says something positive about Dubbo.
We've had crime all the way back through.
That's right,
Talking about those issues, there they are. That's right.
So it was officially gazetted a village.
Yeah.
Then in 1999, as part of the sesquicentenary celebrations,
Sesquicentenary.
they did some Dubbo Day Awards to celebrate Dubbo Day, and they gave out some awards. And it seemed like a nice way to pat some people on the back and say, thank you for your contribution to Dubbo. And then it wasn't long after that it was thought, well, actually, that was a pretty nice little thing to do. Maybe we should do that every year. So since the early 2000s, every year we've done the Dubbo Day Awards on Dubbo Day on the 23rd of November.
Lovely.
And it's just a great opportunity to say to people, usually behind the scenes people, thank you for doing a great job. Thank you for contributing to the great community that we have in Dubbo. Now, you have our Australia Day Awards, of course, and they're people that are doing some wonderful things in our community. And obviously some of those people often know about those people. Oh, yes, I know Billy and he's done some great work and I've seen him doing that for years. I would say it's fair to argue that some of these people that get Dubbo Day Awards, many people in the community wouldn't know about the great work they're doing. They're not doing it to get an award. They're not doing it for any sort of public accolades. They're just doing it because they believe in.
They are.
Yeah, that's right. Whatever they're doing, whoever they're helping, whatever organisation it is. So it is a good opportunity to pat those people on the back. We get former councillors, obviously current councillors, but former councillors are invited along as well to hand out some of those awards. Right. Good opportunity for them to be involved still. It's a nice way of even saying to them, come along and be a part of Dubbo Day Awards because you made a contribution to Dubbo as a councillor as well. And so that's on this Thursday, 23rd of November, and council meeting day is on this Thursday as well.
So is it, what time?
10 o'clock in the morning.
10 o'clock morning? DRTCC?
No, there was actually another booking there, so we couldn't get the DRTCC, so we had to take this one out to the library. And that was an interesting internal discussion. When our staff said, sorry, we can't get the DRTCC, which is where we normally have it, do you want to change the day? And I went, oh, no, not really, but I can see the logic for changing the day in that, well, it'd be nice to have it over at the DRTCC, but the 23rd of November is the day.
It's like sort of saying, do you want to change Christmas Day from the 25th to the 26th? That doesn't quite work. There's a reason why you have the day.
So in the end, I said, look, can we find somewhere else? So we've got the zoo. So that'll make it a bit different this year, the function centre at the zoo.
Oh, so it's the function centre at the zoo?
Well, the Savannah room at the zoo. Yeah. So it'll be in there. And normally we get a reasonable sized crowd because you'll get the person winning their award, and there'll normally be some family or supporters. So there might be, in those alone, there might be 40 or 50 people. Then there might be some councillors, former councillors, and you might get a few members of the public come along as well. Everyone's welcome to come along.
So it's an open invitation. Anyone can turn up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just say, I invited you.
Exactly. There's the personal invite right there.
That's right. So that's on the morning of Thursday, and then Thursday night we've got our council meeting. This meeting's in Wellington because we hold them in Wellington on a regular basis.
Happening in Wellington this week, isn't there?
Yeah, there is a lot happening in Wellington. So we've got our briefing down in Wellington, and then the council meeting starts at 5:30 in Wellington in the Wellington Chambers. So
awesome. Anyone
that wants to come along, you can watch it online of course as well. Yeah. But you've got the ability to go along in Wellington.
Well, I look forward to next week to talk about some of the award recipients. Well, my friend, it is that time, and looking forward to hearing this one. It's the Limerick of the Week. So it's been a while since I've asked you about the Limerick of the Week. So what have you got for us this week?
Well, that's exactly the topic I want to talk about. I'm a bit excited to have you back there hosting the podcast for me. So I thought I'd write a limerick about you coming back.
Oh, mate, that's very sweet of you.
Try. I might encourage you to keep coming back in future weeks. I'm not going to promise I'm going to do it about you every week, but for this week, I come back.
As I said, I don't know. We can talk about that.
Okay, so here we go. Mark's back to our great delight. Now you can listen to him day and night. His voice a familiar sound. In Dubbo he's renowned. His return makes everything right.
Oh, that's very sweet of you. A little teardrop. Just sort of start fall there.
Steady on.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, folks, that wraps up again for another episode of Straight from the Mayor's Mouth. Until next week, everyone, take care.
Straight from the Mayor's Mouth with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.